Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast. I am your host, Dylan Lasagna, once again bringing you all the filthy casual takes on the world of sports for you casual sports fans out there like you and me. This is episode number 295, and in this episode, we're here once again to review the week that was the NFL in the 2025 campaign, and week number 7 that was, and we'll take a brief look at the end of this episode of week number 8 and my top 5 headlines. But for most of this episode, as we have done for the last month and a half, we're gonna look back at the week that was, my takeaways from every single game, and my winners and losers of week number 7. So strap in and let's take a look back at the week that was. As always, make sure to follow Very Cold Lasagna on social media on X/Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. If you're listening to this on audio, make sure to rate and review the show, whether it's on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to smash the subscribe button. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We here at Very Cold Lasagna bring you the filthy casual takes. So make sure to also comment down below on the topic at hand, that being week number 7 and the week in review around the league. And tell me how your team did or didn't do, and what you felt coming out of this past week. And smash the like button as well, and tap that notification bell, and share this with your friends. Share this podcast with your neighbors. Share this podcast with all the people around you, even if it's a stranger. Share the good, the bad, the ugly about this podcast entitled Very Cold Lasagna. So that being said, let's talk about the week that was and round out week number 7 in the 2025 NFL season. Honestly, especially in the early morning slate, it was kind of an uninteresting one, to say the least. The afternoon slate did at least provide us something, along with the Sunday nighter. But for the most part, week number 7 was not really all that. It wasn't really all that. I say, honestly, the middle portion of the NFL season, it tends to kind of drag. It really tends to kind of drag and kind of becomes a little bit, It really comes to But at least when you get to December, we finally get to know, we get to know that it does become intense as the playoff race begins. But for right now, it's just, we're in that, as wrestling fans like to say, that boring period. That excuse wrestling fans like to say to make that comparison. But there are some hidden gems in this week from the NFL. But to proceed with the week that was, to proceed with looking at the schedule for this past week, the teams that were on their vacation this week were the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills, which were absolutely needed for both of these teams. And now looking at the schedule right now, starting with Thursday Night Football, only on Amazon Prime Video for that $17.99 a month. The Cincinnati Bengals took on the Pittsburgh Steelers in a division matchup that most people thought the Steelers were going to win, but instead, in a battle where, the two grandpas went at each other, and they traded two 10-point leads throughout the game. Joe Flacco answered the call. He answered Aaron Rodgers' go-ahead touchdown towards the end of the fourth quarter with one of his own to set up Evan McPherson's game-winning field goal, as the Bengals upset the Steelers 33-31 in what ended up being a shootout between the two grandpas in the AFC North. So a very surprising game between the two very veteran quarterbacks. It also showed showed a few things between these two teams. For the Steelers, Aaron Rodgers, he played a good game. He tried to do his best to keep this team afloat, but it also showed an issue with the offense. It showed that there's not really much of a receiving core other than DK Metcalf and I guess Pat Freiermuth, but they're lacking another receiver. They don't have a second or third option, and the rushing attack has been pretty non-existent lately. I'm not sure why that is. And as a team, they have been pretty undisciplined in the last 2 weeks and in 5 days. Well, I say less than 2 weeks because they had played 2 games in 5 days since their early bye week. They committed a total of more than 10 penalties, some of which were backbreaking in this game. So when you're the Steelers, now you have another kind of ish bye. Mike Tomlin has to get this team back in check, especially given that they have this grip on the AFC North, which is not yet slipping, but they have to be careful now. They got to get them back in check if they want to keep their grasp on the AFC North. For the Cincinnati Bengals, looking at on their end, Joe Flacco followed up his near comeback against the Packers, and this time around he got them to a victory, and he looked much better in this go around, consistently dumping the ball in short to mid range situations. And he got a variety of receivers involved in this one, especially to Jamar Chase, following up in that game in Green Bay. The run game, which has been stagnant pretty much all season, it had his best game all year. Chase Brown looked very well. The offensive line surprisingly held up against TJ Watt in that defensive front, only allowing 2 sacks near the end of the game. That happened near the end of the game. So, the Bengals are surprisingly still kind of in it. They're 3-4, not entirely out of it. They have 2 winnable games against the Jets and the Bears before their bye week, so they're still in the fight for the division. After finding a few flaws in their division rival, and you still have the Baltimore Ravens in that as well. So they're not quite sellers before the trade deadline, especially given that. Oh, they might trade away Trey Henderson. No, not just yet. Not just yet. So, don't discount the Bengals quite yet. Meanwhile, looking at the Sunday slate of games, starting with the early morning portion, in the last bit of international games in London, mate, the LA Rams took on the Jacksonville Jaguars. They didn't have their number 1 receiver in Puka Nacua, but it didn't matter for them. Matthew Stafford laid on a wrestle dream on the all-elite Jaguars with 5 touchdowns in a London beatdown, 35-7 in London. The Rams looked sharp in this one, and that was even without Puka Nacua, and they even flew in late from Baltimore to London on the Friday before, I believe, that they flew in, and they still played well in pretty much every single phase of the game. The defense sacked Trevor Lawrence nearly 10 times. Matthew Stafford had 5 touchdowns and threw it to pretty much almost everyone. Devontae Adams had, I believe, his 1 to 2 touchdowns. And then his tight end had a touchdown. So the Rams pretty much set themselves up nicely before their bye week. They're tied with the 49ers and the Seahawks going into their bye week. So the Rams can make a very nice run coming out of the bye when they return. Meanwhile, for the Jaguars, what happened? It's been 2 weeks since they had that big comeback win against the Kansas City Chiefs, and honestly, I gave them a lot of leeway, especially to Trevor Lawrence, because he was still learning and adjusting to Liam Cohen's scheme, but I feel like it seems like a him issue than it is a team issue. Sure, it doesn't help where his teammates were dropping balls and committing 11 team penalties, but it just seems like Lawrence just doesn't have it. He got sacked all game long for holding on to the ball too long, and he just generally made bad decisions. This team feels like it feels fluky, and they got too greedy. Rather than taking points, going for field goals, even though they missed 1 before the end of the half, they still should have gotten some points on the board to try to keep themselves in it. They had multiple chances to do so, but they didn't. He got too aggressive when his team needed points. He mean Liam Cohen, when they were majorly behind, and they got their asses whooped. So a lot to think about for the Jaguars during their own bye. Meanwhile, down in Chicago, the Bears took on the New Orleans Saints. The duo of DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monagai, alongside the Bears defense, carried the team in this one in a dominant win over the Saints, 26-14. For the Saints, looking at their side of things, they almost made this game close. They had a one-way ticket to trying to upset the Bears at one point. Spencer Rattler led a solid drive to end the first half. They scored in the end. They scored a touchdown to end the first half, and then continued that wave of momentum, and started the second half with another touchdown. They cut the deficit 20-14 after being down 20-0 throughout the first half, but that was pretty much all they could muster against a Bears defense that was bullying him all game long, and they continued to bully him all day long. They gave him fits, forced him into 3 total interceptions, and he lost a fumble. So it just continues to show you just how seriously flawed and seriously mistake riddled this Saints team really is, and talent efficient this Saints team really is, especially at quarterback. For as much fight as this team tries to have, especially Spencer Rattler tries to play hard. For the Bears, the defense is mainly their day, including the run game. They forced 2 turnovers on Rattler in the first half, in the second quarter, that led to 2 touchdowns on the offense. But they got burned to end the first half and start the second half. Caleb Williams was ineffective in the passing game because of his own insistence to hold on to the ball for forever. It's still a bad habit to have. And the offensive line, they had their odd day. But again, the positive is that the running game bailed them out on offense, and they were scoring. But it just goes to show that they still have a lot to clean up. There's still way too much to clean up, and there's not much leeway anymore because they don't have a bye week anymore. So if the Bears want to compete with the Packers and the Lions in the NFC North, they have to clean up all these small and big mistakes. And I still think that Ben Johnson is at least the right guy to help them do so. Meanwhile, down in rainy and a terrible weather conditioned Cleveland, the skid marks, their defense picked apart Tua, turned the ball over all day, even getting a pick 6 in the second half, and Quinshawn Judkins helping out with a hat trick day as the Cleveland Browns beat the Miami Dolphins 31-6. And man, this Dolphins team, boy, they suck. They absolutely suck. I feel like, I don't know. I don't know if it's safe to say that they're worse than the skid marks, but I don't know. I say they're on an equal playing field as the skid marks. Sure, yeah, they at least have a quarterback, but boy, he looks so broken. And yeah, it's pretty hypocritical for Tua to call out his teammates last week if the effort, how to either no showing or showing up late to practices, and then he's the one that was playing shitty all game, frequently missing receivers, turning the ball over 3 times, and then he got benched in the fourth quarter. And then, yeah, the defense at least tried. They at least tried to keep the game, within reach, but then they gave up. They gave up as the game went along. And I'm surprised that Mike McDaniel is still head coaching this team. I mean, maybe it's just only a matter of time until he gets fired. I mean, again, I don't call for anyone's head. I don't call for anyone's job security, but if they're not doing well, then yeah, it's going to be eventually the straw that breaks the camel's back at some point. But yeah, when you lose to an equally worse skid marks team, but it's not just losing to the skid marks, it's the way that lost to the skid marks. It should have been the straw that broke the camel's back for ownership. I don't know how Mike McDaniel is surviving this week. So again, here we are talking about how it's only a matter of time that Mike McDaniel is shown the door. Meanwhile, for the Browns, I mean, not much to say about them because they were beating up on an inferior team. Dylan Gabriel didn't even do all that much this week at quarterback, but that's okay because Quinshon Judkins continued to be a good running back. And he provided 3 touchdowns, but 2 of them were stat padded by his defense, giving him short fields off of turnovers. But he had his own big touchdown on, I think it was like 60 yards or 60 or 49 yards. But he was pretty successful in general with a lot of running room and, again, his own big touchdown. So the Browns should continue to make Quinshon the focal point of the offense. Meanwhile, down in Kansas City, we had the Chiefs taking on the Las Vegas Raiders in an AFC West showdown, which honestly didn't feel like one. It didn't feel like one at all because the Chiefs jumped out to a 21-0 halftime lead, courtesy of Patrick Mahomes' 3 touchdowns. And yeah, they blanked the Raiders. They shut them out 31-0. And honestly, I really don't have much to say about the Raiders in this one. Other than I told you all last week that this conservative game plan where Chip Kelly was going to try to have Geno Smith just check it down all so often and heavily focus on Ashton Jeanty, it wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work against good teams. Against better teams with good coordinators like Steve Spagnuolo, they were going to sniff this out and force Geno Smith to throw the damn ball and throw the damn ball plus 10 yards. They held both of them to under 100 yards. Geno Smith 100 yards under 100 yards passing, and Ashton Jeanty especially not even close to 50 yards rushing. And you don't even have to look at the stat sheet because, again, I'm not a stats guy. I'm more of a let's just look at the performance. Let's look at the TV guy. And you can even say that, man, they suck. They absolutely sucked in this game. The Raiders, I don't believe they even crossed midfield more than once in this one. Embarrassing effort all around. But at the same time, it also showcased of just how bad this roster was constructed in the offseason. It also makes you wonder, did Mark Davis really make the right decision in hiring Pete Carroll? I mean, sure, he can try to make the best out of his guys. Like, he tried to coach them up, but it's all about execution at the end of the day. And also, the injuries in this game didn't help either, especially to Max Crosby. The Chiefs, meanwhile, it seems like they fully shook off the early season funk. Patrick Mahomes looked very efficient in this one. Granted, they played a shitty Raiders team. He has his full set of weapons back in Rashee Rice, who came back from the 6-game suspension, and Xavier Worthy, alongside a new deep threat in Tyquan Thornton. And obviously, you have Hollywood Brown and what's his name? Juju Smith-Schuster, do all assist Travis Kelce and Mahomes himself. So, yeah, they decided to go all out in this one after being a little bit more reserved last week against Detroit. And it all worked out against a crappy Raiders team. Again, granted, it is against the Raiders. So, yeah, they decided to make a statement against a inferior division rival. So, you could probably say, in regards to the Chiefs, they're like, Super Bowl losers curse? What's that? What is that? Meanwhile, down in Minnesota, the Vikings took on the Philadelphia Eagles. The big three of Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, and Devontae Smith, they finally got it going with a combined 3-touchdown effort to stave off the Vikings 28-22. For the Minnesota Vikings, man, they had so many opportunities to try and win this game. They kept things close despite the Eagles' offense finally heating up. But the problem was they couldn't cash in the end zone. Like they only scored 1 touchdown in the red area, but they had more than enough times to score in the red. But the thing was, Carson Wentz, he just couldn't connect with anyone in the red zone, and it was either that or he got sacked. So, yeah, he failed to take advantage of his talented squad in that red zone. And when he did, with TJ Hawkinson, it got taken away by replay. So they have to operate better in the red zone. And I feel like, he'll continue to start until JJ McCarthy gets healthy, and we don't know when that is. I feel like he would have by now, but it is what it is. Wentz he's a high risk, high reward guy. But he'll continue to start until he gets JJ McCarthy gets healthier. Meanwhile, for the Eagles, Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, they finally had a good game where they all got along, and they connected on multiple mid to deep range passes to get the offense out of its funk. They finally got aggressive. There's less emphasis on Saquon in this one, and the tush push too. So any takes that many analysts and I had about their offense being too predictable, it could be put on hold for now. But hopefully that's the start of a trend that the Eagles can finally be a bit more aggressive. Meanwhile, down in the gangrene side of New York, the Carolina Panthers took on the New York Jets in a low-scoring affair, which saw Bryce Young connect with Xavier Legette at the goal line for the game's only touchdown to beat the Jets 13-6. The Jets lost to the Panthers, but for the Panthers, their third straight win does come at a cost of losing Bryce Young, who had been playing much better since getting their asses whooped by the Patriots in Week 4. Bryce Young left at one point during the game with a high ankle sprain that will now sideline him for the Bills next week and potentially even more. So Andy Dalton will have to step in. He did all right in keeping the game out of place and away from the Jets from trying to claw back away, and also the defense too. So, but unfortunately for the Kitties in blue, they're on a 3-game winning streak, but losing Bryce Young is pretty bad timing for a team that was picking things up. Whether their win streak was kind of real or fraudulent, that kind of sucks, as they're entering a really tough stretch now when it comes to games. Meanwhile, for the New York Jets, man, like what do you even talk about with this team? Justin Fields gets benched at halftime for Tyrod Taylor, but Tyrod Taylor didn't do any better. He didn't make any difference. He underthrew receivers, turned it over twice. So essentially, he didn't play like he did against Tampa Bay a month ago when he nearly led that comeback. So this is a team that pretty much has no answers at nearly every position, other than maybe some parts of the defense. And this is very terribly coached under Aaron Glenn. So they essentially have no answers, and I don't really have an answer to like what to take away from this Jets team, because right now they look very bad. Meanwhile, down in Tennessee, the New England Patriots took on the Tennessee Titans. The Patriots turned a close game into a runaway one in the second half, courtesy of a scoop and score touchdown, as they blew out the Titans 31-13. As I need some water for all my audio listeners. Much better. For the Patriots, we can all talk about how Drake May played a great game in this one and had a nice nice touchdown pass to what's that receiver's name? The one that has a nice booty. No, I'm just kidding. Its last name is Booty. Okay, I can't get over that. But anyway, but let's not overlook the fact that running back Ramondre Stevenson, he plowed through the Titans' run defense repeatedly with ease. Finished the day looking pretty sharp, but more importantly, no fumbles. He was scrutinized frequently over his fumbling problems, including by his head coach, Mike Vrabel, but he played a clean game. So for now, this is pretty encouraging for him, especially given the fact that I don't think they have Antonio Gibson for right now. But this was pretty encouraging for Ramondre Stevenson, and I hope he continues to keep this up. Meanwhile, for the Tennessee Titans, obviously they fired Brian Callahan earlier this past week. Now it's last week, obviously, and the interim head coach is Mike McCoy. The Titans did keep things close. They even had a lead for a quarter and change, but it's still pretty much the same problems what they gave up that lead, especially when their top player Jeffrey Simmons left. So all of that feeling of an upset against New England pretty much thrown out the window. because they made the same mistakes, and the Patriots took advantage of it and ran roughshod on them the rest of the way. That started with the deep shot touchdown from Drake May to again, the receiver's name that ends in some booty. But anyway, and then you had Cam Ward fumbling away, untouched, the ball that just slipped out of his hands for a scoop and score touchdown that pretty much essentially sealed the game away for the Titans. No matter who the coach is, this Titans team is very problematic in the wrong ways, like all of the wrong ways. Meanwhile, now looking ahead to the late afternoon slate of games, we have the Denver Broncos taking on the New York Giants in the Mile High, and what a game this was. This was a pretty crazy game. They were down 19-0, Denver being, in the fourth quarter, and the Broncos suddenly came to life, outscoring the Giants 30-7 in the final frame, and just when it seemed Jackson Dart wanted for the G-Men, no, here comes Bo Nix with less than 30 seconds to go. He had his own game-winning drive and got Will Lutz in position to kick a game-winning field goal in a wild comeback after being down 19-0 in the fourth quarter. The Broncos won it in the end, 33-32. Let's talk about the Denver Broncos first, because, yeah, the good news is that they're in first place in the AFC West for now, and they're keeping a distance away from the Chargers and the Chiefs. More on the Chargers in a bit, by the way. The bad news is that they don't feel like a first place team because, yeah, even though they completed another crazy comeback, it's just like they always got to do it in the fourth quarter. Like they're not present in the previous like three quarters. Like they always have to be. They're always a fourth quarter team. Like they're just so wildly inconsistent, especially on offense. The defense was on and off. Went to get the Jackson Dart until the interception in the fourth that changed the game, and that jump started Bo Nix in the offense. Which, by the way, it started off slower than all their other games all season long, and yeah, that's when they found their opening in the fourth quarter. So if they want to compete in this AFC West and let alone compete for a playoff spot the rest of the way, they have to be present for an entire game. They have to be consistent, not just for one quarter, because that's going to end up biting them in the ass at some point. They have to be in the now for all four quarters, the entire game, not just for the fourth quarter. All right. Meanwhile, for the New York Giants, what the fuck was that? Apparently, I guess the Dork continues to never leave the new Dork Giants. Like, it seriously doesn't. Like, not even with a potential nice quarterback in Jackson Dart, who continues to like do well, even like against a top 10 defense in Denver. Jackson Dart seemed like he put the Giants on top, 19-0 for three quarters, and it seemed well on their way. Like they seemed well on their way to upsetting the Giants, just like they did last week against the Eagles. But then Brian Daboll stopped getting aggressive, and when his quarterback needed to get a first down, he threw a pick. And I believe at one point he also got hurt, but not by all that much. But still, he threw an interception. That was a major and game-breaking mistake that got the Broncos back in it. And the Giants defense, they managed to stop Bo Nix for most of the game, but they also disappeared when Bo Nix started firing darts and using his legs in the fourth. But it also didn't help losing one of their key defenders. It was like at one point during the game. Regardless, how do you massively choke this? Like a 19-point lead, and then they allowed 30 points, 22 of which were unanswered. 22 unanswered points during that comeback. This massive choke reheated the seat on Brian Daboll, and if they continue to lose games like this, let alone lose games, yeah, Brian Daboll's head is going to be like gone again, no matter how well Jackson Dart continues to perform. Now, in the powder blue side of Los Angeles, the Colts had to make a return to LA to face this time against the Chargers. But this time around, the Colts had more success this time in LA as Jonathan Taylor pulled another hat trick, 3-touchdown performance as the Colts defense made life hell for Justin Herbert to shut the lights out on the Chargers 38-24. The Colts continue their success with a defensive rebound despite a fourth quarter hiccup. Sure, they allowed the Chargers to try and get back into it in the fourth quarter, but they made 3 key plays to stop the game from getting to that point of them choking. Linebacker Grove Stewart nabbed a red zone interception, and safety Nick Cross broke up a pass to prevent another touchdown, which happened in the first half. And DeForest Buckner then came up with 2 big sacks to pretty much ice the game for good, which happened in the fourth quarter. So, yeah, those 2 things that happened earlier in the game, which could have made the game closer than it could have been, those prevented a much closer game. So they made some big plays to make sure their second trip to LA again was a more successful one. But those injuries to their defensive line, a lot that they're already compounding the injuries to their secondary, are going to be something to monitor throughout the week. Meanwhile, for the Chargers, how do they keep getting beat up on the offensive line? Like, who placed a hex? Who placed a curse on that offensive line after investing in that throughout the offseason? They're down to their 4th or 5th offensive tackle at the left spot. Like, what did the Clippers do? Seriously, it left the offensive line even more vulnerable. Justin Herbert got hit even more. He turned the ball over in the red zone again. These O-line problems have caused the running game to evaporate. And we get it. The running game has been beaten up too. Najee Harris is gone for the season with the torn Achilles. Amari Hampton's on short-term injured reserve. But the offensive line is not helping either with all these injuries. The Chargers have to hope they're getting some reinforcements back, or if not, they gotta get some help because these injuries, these relentless injuries to the offensive line, I'm pretty sure they're not pleasing Justin Herbert. Meanwhile, down in the desert, we had the Green Bay Packers taking on the Arizona Cardinals, which was surprisingly a tight contest. That in the end, Josh Jacobs notched the go-ahead touchdown after the 2-minute warning before the defense fended off Jacoby Brissett to win this one 27-23. But I just feel like the Packers, they're not playing like a playoff team right now. Sure, they started the season off well, 2-0. Looked like a very balanced very balanced team. But since then, they've looked very uneven, even when they're winning games. Jordan Love, he had a slow start, another one at that. But again, he did enough to drive the team down late to set up Josh Jacobs' go-ahead touchdown. The defense, once again, was pretty much a concern. Like, how did they get torched by Jacoby Brissett? How did they get him to nearly win the game on a 4th down? They were just fortunate that Micah Parsons at least still continued to be a plus, and he had the key sack on Arizona's final drive that put Jacoby at a major disadvantage on the final drive. But regardless, they have to start playing back at the level they once did in the first 2 weeks, because look at the AFC North. The Lions have roared back into form. They're currently in first. I believe they're still currently in first place. If they're not, they're coming back into form as they head into their bye week. And the Bears, sure, they're still not quite there yet, but maybe at some point in time, you never know what's going to happen to them. So the Packers, they got to start playing back once they did in the first 2 weeks of the year, because this is starting to become a little bit of a concerning performance in the last couple of weeks. Meanwhile, for Arizona, despite a few plays, he probably wanted back. Jacoby Brissett once again continued to play pretty efficient, keeping the offense moving to keep pace with the Packers. And even held the Cardinals even held the lead for a good chunk of the game before they gave it up towards the end. So they lost another close game. Obviously, they have to start seeing results. They have to start seeing wins with these close games. And they probably also want like the play calls back from Drew Petzing. Like, I don't know why they went for a quarterback sneak midway through the fourth quarter, like on a fourth down, when maybe they should have ran a fake sneak, I guess. So Drew Petzing, I don't know what he was doing there, but at least in the end, they had another solid outing from the backup quarterback, which should give Jonathan Gannon during the bye week some consideration on whether or not to keep rolling with Jacoby after the bye, even if and when Kyler Murray is healthy. Meanwhile, down in Jerry's world, we had the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Washington Commanders as Dak Prescott and the offense blowtorched Washington's defense with 3 touchdowns in a dominant NFC East win, 44-22. Yeah. So most people expected this to be a shootout. I expected this to be a shootout, but it ended up being a blowout in favor of the Cowboys. And a lot of that had to do with the Commanders' defense being exposed, but the bigger story was injury mania running wild on this offense for Washington going into this game, mainly to their receivers Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, and Noah Brown. And while Jay Daniels tried to keep this team into it, he ended up getting hurt himself and falling victim to injury mania in the third quarter, trying to recover a fumble after he had a sack fumble, and he injured his hamstring in doing so. And that was pretty much a wrap for the Commanders in that game. Now, the likes of Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter are saying it's not a long-term issue, and his status for the game against the Chiefs next week is not quite certain yet. So that's the good news for Washington, that it's not a long-term issue. And well, no one's sure yet on whether, like, how many weeks that Jane Daniels is going to miss, if he's going to miss any weeks at all. But the thing is, they sit at 3-4, and they're currently a shell of what they were a year ago when they were the Cardiac Commanders, making that crazy playoff run when they almost made it to the Super Bowl. But yeah, the more important thing is that they got hope that Jane Daniels, he obviously has to get healthy again, because he's already missed 2 games this year. So that's the more important thing. For the Cowboys, obviously, it was once again a big factor in this one. They had a 44-point outing led by Dak Prescott, 3 touchdowns, and then CeeDee Lamb came back. And you got to give credit to them. The thing is, though, it just still hides the fact that their defense still has issues in the in pass coverage. And there were a few issues of that in this game. And that's still something we have to work on. Like, Matt Eberflush's defense still has things to work on. A pick 6 from Deron Bland on Marcus Mariota isn't going to magically fix those issues either. Then in the Sunday Night Football game, my San Francisco 49ers took on the Atlanta Falcons. Christian McCaffrey bulldozed through the Falcons defense to help the 49ers bounce back from a crushing loss in Tampa Bay, beating the Falcons 20-10. For the Falcons, Bijan Robinson really held in check for most of this game, forcing Michael Penix Jr. to get it going in the air. And he really struggled in that when the spotlight shined on him on the road. He was off target half of the time with Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Darnell Mooney. And he was seriously rattled under pressure by a Niners pass rush that just remembered it had one when making 3 key mistakes. Yeah, a Niners pass rush that very much wasn't there, and now remembered it had one. So for Atlanta, great that they managed to have 2 strong showings against previous playoff contenders in the Commanders and the Bills. But it still has yet to show that they have to play like that on the road. And Sunday night under the bright lights, they didn't do that against the 49ers. So they got to start learning how to do that. Meanwhile, for my San Francisco 49ers, I thought that Fred Warner's injury was going to basically write off the 49ers season, barring a miracle. Now, that's the key phrase, a miracle. Because the Niners were going to miss Fred Warner's heart and soul, his physical and flying play style. It was going to be missed greatly. But you transition to a week later, and this depleted defense stepped up with the mentality of us against the world. Now, there are still some notable lapses in coverage, be it injuries or, with so much youth on the roster, so much youth on that defense, that there's a lot of inexperience. But they clipped the wings of Atlanta when it mattered. They didn't really allow the Falcons to do a lot of damage in scoring. They only allowed one touchdown, and that was it. They only allowed 10 points. So I'll give credit to them and Robert Saleh in this game. So that's great. So now it's time to show it again in Houston and to show it again in New York against the Giants. So that's the big test. And obviously you have bigger tests in the next month or so against the Rams at home, the Cardinals on the road, Carolina. So bigger tests awaits for this 49ers team, much depleted 49ers team that hopes to get people back healthy still as they face even more injuries. Then we had the Monday Night Football doubleheader as the Lions took on the Tampa Bay Bucks in the first game. Jahmyr Gibbs torched the Bucks with a 2-touchdown masterclass as his defense sunk any attempts of a Baker Mayfield comeback, 24-9. The Bucks, Baker Mayfield tried to get the Bucks back into it once again, tried to make another one of his usual comebacks, which has been basically the story of Tampa Bay's season so far. Trying to make the most of what's there and make a rally out of it, but they just ran into a brick wall. The Lions pretty much drowned that pretty fast, and I think they potentially exposed just how beat up Tampa Bay is and potentially will be down the line. At least on offense. I think at least offensively, because Emeka Egbuka was able to play in this one, but the Lions defense, they silenced him. He was pretty quiet during this game in comparison to the last 5 games. He was also pretty quiet in the Niners game too. But that was also because he left due to injury. And Baker's other options like Cade Otton and Tez Johnson, they were modest at best, which is not good because that pretty much limited Tampa Bay's options. So Tampa Bay, I say they're still a scrappy team. They'll still be in it because, well, the NFC South, it pretty much sucks. But against a better team like Detroit, they still have to prove that, okay, we can still keep up against really better teams. I mean, they technically still can because they tried against Philadelphia, but the injuries and unforced errors, it caught up to him in this one. And to make matters worse, Mike Evans, who came back in this game, he left again in this game before the end of the first half in what ended up being a potentially season-ending broken collarbone. Todd Bowles at post-game said that, yeah, he's going to miss most of, if not all, the season with the broken collarbone, which is a big blow to a receiving core that, has to heavily rely on Emeka Egbuka for the rest of the year because, well, Mike Evans is gone. Chris Godwin is not he's not playing like the receiver he once was, mainly because of injury issues. So yeah, a lot is going to be riding the weight on Egbuka and Baker Mayfield, as well as Bucky Irving, who was sorely missed in this one. Meanwhile, for the Detroit Lions, the defense got outworked last week by the Chiefs, even with the simple plays that Chiefs were running against them. They also lost a few more guys to injury, but going to this Monday night game against the Bucks, Kelvin Shepherd challenged his reserves, and with a makeshift defense, they answered the challenge. They delivered with heavy coverage on the Bucks reserve receivers. Again, granted, reserve receivers, and even when during the time that they were there, Mike Evans and Emeka Ibuka, they delivered. They forced a few turnovers and they sacked Baker Mayfield 4 times. They even pressured Baker heavily in this game, and yeah, they limited Baker to 9 points, and they didn't allow a comeback of any kind at all. So Kelvin Shepherd and his defense, they deserve a lot of credit in this one. And yeah, they now enter the bye week at 5-2, and now they have an opportunity to hopefully get healthy, especially on that side of the ball. Meanwhile, in the second game of the Monday night doubleheader, which was not making people on the East Coast happy because they had to stay up at 10 o'clock. And hopefully they did if they decided to stay up. The Seattle Seahawks took on the Houston Texans. A pair of Zach Charbonnet touchdowns and a relentless defensive effort allowed the Seahawks to put away the Texans 27-19. Yeah, even on the West Coast, not exactly the most exciting way to end week number 7. For the Houston Texans, one would have thought that 2 weeks to prepare for this one would have helped DeMeco Ryans' team, but no, it didn't. CJ Stroud and the Texans offense, they still look flat as hell. Stroud looked like a deer in the headlights, like he looked rattled under pressure, and he couldn't connect with any receiver, not even Nico Collins. Now, sure, they tried, they sort of did towards the end of the game in the fourth quarter, but it was way too late to do that. They also had several chances to get back in the game in the second half, but they kept sputtering in the red zone. So they got to get back to the drawing board on offense. Meanwhile, for the Seahawks, they had a hot 14-0 start, but Sam Darnold, the offense, they stalled out for most of the rest of the game, a lot because they allowed a end zone sack touchdown, which was recovered by Will Anderson. Sam Darnold also threw a pick. Sam Darnold also overthrew the ball and didn't really get on the same page with his receivers. But fortunately, their defense prevented the Texans from truly making a comeback. So, yeah, like the Seahawks defense continues to step up even when the offense had a pretty off night. So, yeah, that's pretty much week number 7 in the NFL. Not a whole lot of excitement in this one, but there were at least a few select gems like that comeback from the Broncos, and I guess the Sunday nighter against the Falcons and the 49ers, subjectively at least. And yeah, other than that, not really much. Looking at the winners and losers from week number 7. Starting with my winners, the Detroit Lions defense, stopping Baker Mayfield and the Bucks offense, limiting them to 9 points. The Indianapolis Colts putting on another impressive showing, and who knows, maybe they are for real. Maybe they are legit. Maybe Daniel Jones is making resurgence. Maybe, but for now, we'll see. We'll see if this is legit. I don't know when they're facing the Kansas City Chiefs, or if they are at any point in the season, but that'll be the big litmus test in that one. And then the Eagles' big three of Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, they finally got it going on offense, and in general, the offense, minus Saquon, unfortunately, they were much more aggressive in this game against the Minnesota Vikings. So, yeah, take what you learned in that game and keep it rolling going forward. And then looking at the losers of this game, the New York Giants. Like, how do you blow that 19-0 lead and allow 30 points in the fourth quarter? Really? Like, again, the Dork doesn't leave in the New York Giants. And then you have to look at the LA Chargers and, to a degree, the Denver Broncos. Why exactly the Denver Broncos in the losers category? Well, because they almost lost the game in the way that they did before they miraculously came back in this one. But they're in the losers category along with the LA Chargers, who got their asses whooped by the Indianapolis Colts, because guess who's on the rise again? The Kansas City Chiefs, the kings of the AFC West. So both teams have to start winning games, especially the Chargers, given that they're 3-0 in the division. Otherwise, the king of kings in the AFC West are gonna, come right back in it and take their throne again. Then we have the Tampa Bay Bucks offense, mainly because they couldn't get anything going in that game against the Lions, and they lost Mike Evans for pretty much the season, which is a major blow to Baker Mayfield and company. So looking at week number 8, this is probably the most, I'd say the most weak slate of the season, mainly because a lot of teams are on bye this week, and the schedule doesn't really look that enticing unless everyone goes balls to the walls because they know they're going up against the World Series, I guess. But the season, this week 8 doesn't look enticing again. It goes back to the point of the middle portion of the NFL season in general. It's just not exactly that. So my top 5 headlines going to week number 8, at least looking at the Sunday night game, is going to be at least probably one of the more intriguing ones so far. Aaron Rodgers finally facing his old team on Sunday night as he and the Pittsburgh Steelers take on Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. And I don't think Aaron Rodgers hasn't faced the Packers yet when he was on the Jets, and obviously now with the Steelers. So this should be a heavily story-driven matchup in week number 8. And then we have the rematch of the New York Giants taking on the Philadelphia Eagles from week number 6, where the Giants upset Philadelphia in the Meadowlands. So will they be able to repeat that success and try to bounce back from that massive choke, or the Eagles get their revenge? The red hot Dallas Cowboys, they take their offense to the mile high to face a tough Denver Broncos defense, and what could be a battle of two sides. But the Broncos might be at a disadvantage because Dre Greenlaw got suspended for this game for whatever reason. And then we have the Buffalo Bills returning from their bye to try and play catch up with the Patriots in the division race, as they head to Carolina to take on the Panthers. Hopefully they had the week off to figure out their issues and try to hopefully now they get to resolve them. And then last but not least, just around the league, can we at least go through 1 week without any players suffering a significant injury, let alone a player that has to go on short-term IR? Because I feel like not just my team, but like a lot of teams in general are having to go through injury mania, running wild. It's like a plague in the NFL. Like, can we just at least go through 1 week without injury mania going ham in the NFL? Just one. There's always at least 1 week where there's like any kind of injury, short-term IR or like a significant injury. Just one. But that was week number 7 in the NFL. Let me know your thoughts, your takes, your opinions on this past week in review in the comments on YouTube, or send me a message on social media on Instagram or Twitter at Very Cold Lasagna. I like to hear what you have to say, and let's have a conversation starter wherever you want to have it. So that's pretty much a wrap on this episode of Very Cold Lasagna, episode number 295. And the week that was week number 7, I have been your host, Dylan Lasagna, bringing you all the filthy casual takes on the world of sports for you sports fans out there like you and me. And keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge. And until the next one, in the next episode when I see ya, peace out.